Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Danielle Desautelle and today's video is going to be a little bit different than my normal videos. As you guys can probably tell if you've seen any of my videos, you know that I primarily talk about manifesting, but something that I have also been practicing on the side is cultivating more and more feminine energy. And I very much see the world through the perspective of feminine energy and masculine energies. In fact, I snuck it into one of my videos. I think it was my belief levels versus belief structures video, where I talk about how realities are basically, they're constructed of, the way that I see them is the belief structure is like the shell, and then the state is basically the inner part of the reality. And I reference how it's very similar to the masculine and feminine energies, and I actually had a couple people comment on it. But for me, the way that I see a lot of this world is, like I said, through the perspective of masculine and feminine energies. And so recently I felt called to share more of this side of me, because although I started off as seeing manifesting and feminine energy as like separate, I saw, cultivating more of my feminine energy as more self-development, and manifesting as just learning the laws of the universe and learning how to like practice the laws of the universe. Even though I started off seeing them separate, they ended up actually marrying and very much complementing each other. And so in today's video, I'm going to be talking about not only how feminine energy actually accelerated my manifestation game, but I'm also going to be sharing how you can also start cultivating more feminine energy into your own life and into your manifestations. But something that I want to make clear before I even start this video is just to point out that you don't necessarily need to see the world or manifesting through this perspective. Like I said, this is just one of the perspectives that I hold when it comes to seeing reality in general, and it ended up complementing my manifesting. When I first became aware of manifesting and when I first became aware of feminine energy, they were actually around the same time. I was very much into the spiritual community. I didn't necessarily follow one specific person when it came to manifesting, and I didn't necessarily follow one specific person when it came to feminine energy. I was just in this like energy learning perspective, we could say. And I knew that there was some overlap between feminine energy and manifesting, but I didn't actually, like when I first was trying to get a handle on manifesting, I didn't try and manifest from a feminine energy perspective. For me, when I first started manifesting, I wanted to know all of the logistics. I wanted to create my own structure on how I could like find a way to encompass all of the different perspectives when it came to manifesting. So feminine energy fit into my overall structure of how I understood manifesting, but it wasn't the only perspective that I held when it came to manifesting. The reason why I mainly got into feminine energy was because for me, it was the next level of personal development, and it very much resonated with me. Now keep in mind, I grew up in a very masculine, my childhood was very much masculine oriented. I am the eldest daughter. Not only that, but I have 3 younger brothers. I'm also the eldest cousin on both sides of my family. And so from a very young age, I never really felt like I got to embrace my feminine energy. I wasn't even aware of what feminine energy was as a kid, but looking back, I can see how I was very much trained in the masculine perspective of things. You have to go after what you want, you have to do in order to get what you want. Not only that, but even just growing up with like all brothers, I very much, especially when they got like bigger than me and they started practicing the wrestling moves on me, I was very much conditioned to see being smaller and being more girly as weaker. So my way of, we could say, surviving my childhood was very much learning how to be stronger through my own masculine energies. Like I said, at this time in my life, I wasn't even fully aware of what masculine energy was or feminine energy. This is just looking back in hindsight of how I grew up and why I was attracted to feminine energy in the first place when I first became aware of it. Because what ended up happening was I eventually got to a point in my life where I was suffering massive burnout. Like I was stressed beyond my mind. I may have had some successes and accomplishments, but they were never enough. And I felt like I was always on go, go, go. I was always in my head. I was always overthinking. I was always like, I don't want to say I was always spiraling, but I was definitely overthinking a lot and over analyzing. And I never actually felt like I could just take a break. And not only that, but growing up in a more masculine perspective of thinking and doing and hustling, I also noticed how it affected my relationships, and specifically more romantic relationships. Like from a very young age, I actually developed a hyper independence, we could say. And looking back, I can definitely see how I developed a very insecure attachment style. And if you're not familiar with the 4 attachment styles, there's the dismissive avoidant attachment style, there's the fearful avoidant attachment style, there's the anxious attachment style, and then the secure attachment style. And I teetered on the avoidant attachment style and the anxious attachment style, which actually I think that combination was the fearful avoidant attachment style, where, you know, because I had like a hyper independence about me, I avoided relationships, but then when I would get into a relationship, I found myself being like overly anxious about it. And so growing up from like living in this energy affected me in more ways than one. When I first went out to cultivate more feminine energy into my life, it was mainly for self-development. I wanted to cultivate more relaxation in my life. I wanted to give myself permission to enjoy life more. Eventually what ended up happening was I used it to manifest my desires more easily and more effortlessly, which I'm going to get into later in this video. But my whole point here is that coming across feminine energy and learning how to cultivate my feminine energy and doing the inner work to express more of my feminine energy completely transformed my life, and later on my manifesting. Now, when I started doing more inner work for purely self-development reasons, not manifesting reasons, but purely self-development reasons, what ended up happening was it started to enhance all areas of my life. It started to enhance my money life. It started to enhance my relationship life. And it even started complementing and enhancing my manifestations. In fact, when I went back and looked at all of my successful manifestations, specifically with the more transformational ones where I would change my conception of self or my relationship to the thing that I wanted, like with money, relationships, all that fun stuff, I noticed that all of my successful manifestations actually had this key element of feminine energy built into it. And more specifically, when it came to embodiment and living in the end, or entering a state. The more and more I healed my feminine energy and cultivated more and more of that feminine energy, the better I felt like I could actually embody the state of the wish fulfilled, or live in the end. I started creating instead of hustling. I started being instead of doing. And every time I would do an action, I did it from the perspective of entering a state of consciousness, or did it from the state of embodying the state of the wish fulfilled. So yes, I may have taken action, but it wasn't because I needed to do the action in order to get a result. It was I was taking this action to be the person that I wanted to be in that moment. And I actually talk a little bit about this in my non-action video if you want to check that out as well. But I essentially started taking action to be the version of me that I wanted to be, rather than to do the thing that I needed to do in order to get a result. And not only that, but one of the best things that ever came from me learning how to cultivate more and more of my feminine energy was actually learning how to get out of my head. As you guys can probably tell with my own manifestation process and even how I talk about manifesting, it's very headspacey. It's very logical, it's very rational. It's very much like, you do this, you get this, you do this, you get this. And for the record, when I first came across manifesting, creating my own structure like this served me, especially in the long run, because it helped me understand things and give permission for all of the different like manifestation processes out there by creating my own system and understanding of like how to go about manifesting, like what was actually happening. But after I got clear on that structure, the act of embodying and being actually ended up enhancing what I had already built as the foundation, or as the container for how I went about manifesting. I went from hustling and fight or flight response to relaxation and enjoyment and being in my body rather than in my head all day. If and when I did action, it was only for the purpose of embodiment rather than trying to get a certain result. Not only that, but learning how to shift out of my head and into my body was actually the singular skill set that completely eliminated spiraling from my manifesting game. Because when we're spiraling, what's happening is we're all in our head. We're, you know, overthinking about something, we're over problem solving, we're making mountains out of molehills usually. And so learning how to take that energy that was in my head and shift my focus to my body and ground myself into my body for just feminine energy purposes. Like I said, it was the singular thing that got me out of any and all spiraling. Like at this point, I don't really spiral anymore because I know how to shift out of my head and into my body and ground myself into my body. My whole point in sharing this is that learning how to cultivate and heal my feminine energy served all areas of my life, including manifesting. It made manifesting a lot more enjoyable. It made manifesting a lot easier too. And not only that, but I noticed more significant quantum shifts happened faster, especially with more transformational manifestations, when I actively cultivated more feminine energy. Because I was no longer in my head all day. I was actually embodied in the state of the wish fulfilled. And to this day, one of the best gifts that feminine energy ever gave me was it shifted me out of this doing mindset and put me more in this being mindset. And I felt like I got to be more me when I did this. It was no longer about trying to get an end result. It was about being that end result and then watching literal magic happen right before my eyes. I started attracting the kind of relationships I wanted, the kind of men that I wanted, the kind of money and the kind of lifestyle that I wanted, all because I shifted out of this masculine energy of doing and hustling and focused on cultivating more of that feminine energy, more of that embodiment, more of that being, more of that state. And so if you're someone who feels called to heal your feminine energy or cultivate more of your feminine energy into your life and your manifestations, I want to leave you with 4 tips on how you can start applying it to not only your manifestations, but to your life in general. My first piece of advice when it comes to cultivating more feminine energy actually has to do with how you can start cultivating it in your own manifestation process. The way that I like to say it is select with your masculine, embody with your feminine. So what do I mean by this? When it comes to manifesting, both energies are important. Your masculine is the thing that helps you understand and clarify the thing that you want. So start with your masculine. Start asking yourself, okay, well, what is it what do I actually want? Gain clarity on the thing that you really want, like with your headspace, with your masculine energy. Once you gain that clarity, once you get an understanding and gain that clarity of what it is that you actually want, that's when you can shift to your feminine energy and embody the state of the wish fulfilled, where you get out of your head. After you've decided what you want, you can then get out of your head and focus on embodying the state of the wish fulfilled. That's when you can start getting creative with it. That's when you can start asking yourself, well, if I were the version of me who already had the thing that I wanted, what would I be doing? How would I be thinking? How would I be living? What beliefs would I hold? How would I be dressing? You can start embodying the state of the wish fulfilled after you've gained clarity on what it is that you actually want. And so this tip is about incorporating and balancing both energies. Pick with your masculine, embody with your feminine. And for the record, embodiment is actually a form of detachment. And so when you look at the manifestation process as a whole, that's kind of what you're doing essentially. You're gaining clarity on what it is that you actually want. You're making sure that you're seeing that reality through the lens of possibility. And then you are embodying the state of the wish fulfilled, or you're living in the end. You're being the person who has the thing that they want. And you're finding higher levels of security in that embodiment rather than needing it in the 3D reality. And then what ends up happening is, because life is a mirror, it's a reflection of you, it's going to mirror outwards. It's going to reflect outwards. But my whole point when it comes to number 1 is balance your energies. Select with your masculine, embody with your feminine. The second piece of advice I want to leave you with also has to do with manifesting as well. And it's actually a tip on how to handle spiraling. Like I said, embodying more of my feminine energy and learning how to drop from my head into my body after I picked what I wanted was actually the very thing that eliminated spiraling for me. And so if you're someone who is prone to spiraling or tends to spiral a lot, something that can help you not only reduce the spiraling but also completely eliminate the spiraling is learning how to shift from your head and into your body. And so every time you catch yourself wavering or spiraling because of something that's happening in your 3D reality, what you can start practicing is first stopping, becoming aware of the fact that you're actually spiraling, not necessarily trying to stop the spiral, but rather seeing the spiral happen in your head and shift your focus to your body, to the sensations in your body. Your feminine energy lives in your body. Your masculine energy lives in your head. If you find yourself spiraling a lot, that's an indication that you are too in your head and too in your masculine. The way that you can start balancing this out is by literally taking your attention away from your head and putting it onto your body. And if this is new to you, the way that I would start practicing this is just through your own breath. Notice the air going in and out of your lungs. Notice the most indifferent, neutral things about your body. Start looking at your hands just to look at your hands. I know this sounds kind of weird, but this is how I first started off because I was not the best at, connecting to my body because I had never really been taught that before. But what I started doing was when I'd find myself spiraling or obsessing or freaking out, even if it wasn't even like about manifesting, but just kind of like freaking out over a circumstance or something like that, I would actively stop, I would take a breath and I would re-remind myself that I am God in my reality. And then I would re-remind myself that I am not embodying the state of the wish fulfilled at that moment. I didn't do this out of self-judgment. It was more out of self-analysis. So I wasn't like judging myself for like spiraling. It was more of like a snapping of the fingers of waking myself up. And when I re-reminded myself that I wasn't in the state of embodiment, it reminded me to connect back to my body and find security and groundness in my body. And so like I said, if you're someone who is prone to spiraling, start practicing shifting out of your head and into your body more. There's a number of ways you can start practicing this. I may even create a video on this in the future about how to embody the state of the wish fulfilled with your physical body. But for right now, just understand that one of the best ways you can go about it is by shifting out of your head and just focusing on your breath and more neutral, random things on your body. And when you take your attention away from this and put it on this, that's when the spiraling just stops. It goes away because you're no longer focusing on it. And instead you're grounding yourself in your actual body. My third piece of advice when it comes to cultivating more feminine energy and using it to enhance your life is start leaning back instead of going forward and chasing. Start leaning back and letting your manifestations come to you rather than you actively going out and doing manifestation processes in order to get your manifestation. After you've picked what you want, after you've clarified what it is that you want and you've double checked that you do believe that you can experience it, that it is possible for you, that's when you can start leaning back. That's when you can start magnetizing the desire towards you, letting the manifestation come to you. When you start practicing this art, your manifestations will come to you a lot easier, a lot more enjoyably too. I'm not saying that you have to do this in order to get your manifestation. This is just a more enjoyable way of manifesting from my perspective, because although you can manifest from a more masculine, like I gotta do this manifestation process in order to get this result and kind of be more like militant about it, you can get your manifestation that way. I've definitely done that in the past. I've definitely done it with like robotic affirmations. I've done it through a lot of different manifestation methods, but you can manifest that way. It's just, even if you get your manifestation, you're probably going to feel exhausted after the fact. And when you go for the next manifestation, you're probably going to have some resistance to it because you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I just worked myself up. I just did all that work just to get that manifestation. When you learn the art of leaning back and relaxing and letting the thing come to you, things just become so much easier. They become more flowy. They become more relaxed. They become effortless, we could even say. So start practicing leaning back and letting your manifestations come to you. Focus on embodying being more of a magnet, seeing yourself as a magnet for your manifestations rather than the chaser of your manifestations. And the last tip that I'm going to leave you with actually has to do with more dark feminine energy rather than light feminine energy. But I would highly recommend becoming more unapologetic and savage about the things that you actually want in your life, in your reality. The dark feminine energy was an energy that I really started cultivating more consciously in my being, because I grew up very much conditioned as being the good girl, being the people pleaser, being the nice person, like, you know, taking other people's feelings were my responsibility. And so learning how to cultivate more of this dark feminine energy and do the things that I actually wanted to do without, you know, needing other people's approval or needing other people to even understand what I was doing was very transformative. Embracing more of your dark feminine energy and doing things just because you want to do them without needing anyone else's approval or without needing anyone else to understand what you're doing, letting other people judge you for the things that you do and the dreams that you do go after, it's going to take your manifesting to a completely different level because you're going to start owning the real things that you want. When you actually start going after the things that you want and becoming more savage and unapologetic about the real things that you want, even if other people judge you, it's going to not only make you just a happier person, but you're actually going to start seeing success because you actually feel motivated. You actually have the desire to, you know, manifest the real things that you want in your life. And people may or may not get it, and that's totally okay. If you want, you can select a different version of them, or you can do what I do and just take it as a blessing of privacy. My whole point here is that if you cultivating more of your dark feminine energy and that savageness that comes with going after the real things that you want without needing other people's approval or not necessarily needing other people to understand what you're doing, it will unlock a level of freedom that you can't even comprehend. It's kind of like it's like you're in a rebel going after the things that you really want to go after rather than what other people say that you need to go after. But my whole point with this video is actually just to illustrate more of how feminine energy enhanced not only my life but my manifesting, you know, game as well. Because learning how to get out of my head, my masculine energy and more into my body was the very thing that made manifesting a lot more enjoyable, a lot easier, and just a lot more seamless and flowy. And so many other benefits came from it too. I learned how to stop spiraling on the spot. I learned how to do action from the state of consciousness of being rather than to get something in my external reality. I learned how to trust my intuition more. I learned how to trust my higher mind more. And I even learned how to get back into my God state faster because I learned how to stop spiraling. I learned how to get back into my body and into the present moment, which was very much outside of my head. And so if you feel called to cultivate more of your feminine energy and heal more of your feminine energy, whether this is for manifesting or just for personal development, like how I started off with it, I would highly recommend you follow that intuition. I'd recommend that you follow that calling, because it will take your life to the next level, including your manifesting to the next level as well. But like I said at the beginning, feminine energy is a big part of my life, and it's an area that I'm always constantly improving and cultivating and developing. And at this point, it's very much part of how I go about manifesting as well, especially when it comes to those transformational manifestations. Something that you're going to realize, if you haven't realized it already, is that we're in this never-ending game of leveling up. And so one of the ways that I have found peace within the present moment as I continue this game of never-ending leveling up is through this art of feminine energy and through embodiment, where I'm satisfied where I am now, but I'm always going to be reaching for more. I'm always going to try and improve more. And so I feel like I finally found the best balance in my life because of feminine energy. And so, like I said, if you feel called to cultivate more of your feminine energy, I would highly recommend you follow that calling. And in the future, I do plan on making more feminine energy videos, not necessarily relating to manifesting, but just how to go about cultivating more of your savage feminine energy or your dark feminine energy, how to cultivate more of your light feminine energy, how to use your neutral masculine structure to enhance and embody more of that feminine energy, to make more of your feminine energy come alive. And so if you're interested in those kind of videos, definitely let me know in the comments below, especially if you view life through more masculine and feminine energy perspectives. But like I said, it's a big part of my life, and I'm feeling called to share more of it on this channel, so more videos will probably be coming from a feminine energy perspective. But with all that being said, I hope this video helps someone out there on how you can start using your feminine energy to manifest faster, easier, and just having a more enjoyable time with manifesting. Definitely let me know what you think about the video in the comments below. As always, I love hearing everyone's different perspectives. But that's all for now. Until next time, keep creating, everyone, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.